Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. Nice to see you.
You too.
So, thanks for joining me, and we're going to have a little conversation today about your experience through soul therapy and how we met and connected. Um, you are currently in Burlington, right?
Yes.
A daughter who is 11, almost 11.
Yep, almost 11 next week.
And so, do you want to share a little bit about who you were being when you first began soul therapy?
So, yeah, we started initially with like a Reiki session, and that led into a 6 week session, which eventually over the next, I want to say, couple of years was the 3 months and then the 6 months. But when we first started, I was going through a lot of turmoil in my life. I was going through a recent breakup with somebody that I was engaged to. I was going through a change in my career where I had left my job not on the greatest terms. I went through a legal battle, and there was a lot of chaos and turmoil going on in my life. I had a lot of issues with relationships, with my job and my career, with how I felt about myself, and all the while, you know, single mom trying to raise a young lady, and it was overwhelming what I was going through, and I feel like I fought the soul therapy for a while. I resisted the work. I resisted really indulging myself and immersing myself in the work. Um, and I think it was that initially was just kind of fear, right? Fear of the unknown, and not knowing, and not knowing if I was even ready for these changes. But after the 3 month session that we had done, I really saw a change in myself. I started to see changes in my relationship, not only with my peers and with my partners, but also with my daughter and my family, and eat with myself especially. So there was a huge, I want to say, leap from where I was to where I am now after doing, this work for the past 2.5, 3 years. Um, it's a huge difference, and I feel I feel more comfortable in my own skin, and I've seen a huge change in terms of, like I said, in my relationships, and yeah, in kind of figuring out where I am on my path in life.
Yes. Great. Thank you. And can you share? You mentioned a little bit about how this work has changed your relationship with your daughter, but can you go into a little more detail about that? What have you seen shift in terms of how you are as a mother with her?
I am much more aware as a mom. I'm much more conscious of my own actions and how they affect and how they show up, um, in our relationship and in her relationship, even with herself. And um, we are much better at communicating, communicating our needs, um, and how we're much better at communicating like, even our expectations of each other. Um, and for me, I think the biggest part was really acknowledging what she's asking for and honoring those things, because in my own relationship as a child, I was often my feelings were often ignored or brushed off, and I kind of saw myself doing that with her as well, and I know how that affected me clearly. And I don't want to repeat those patterns, and I see the change in a relationship how being aware and being conscious and just really connecting with what she wants and listening to her on that level has changed things for the better. And there's still work. That's an ongoing thing, I think, especially at this age where we're getting into the kind of like pre-teenager the fun time. But I've seen a huge benefit with the way we interact with each other, and the way we're able to communicate and really connect. It's been good.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, I've seen a huge shift in you as a mom. So it's so great to see and hear every week, the shifts that happen and how engaged you are in your parenting with her. It's wonderful. Beautiful.
Thank you.
And can you share a little bit about, what you are learning in your intimate partnerships and in your relationships? What's the changes that you've seen, because you've had a very big journey in that area also. And I think this is an area that a lot of women support in, right?
Yes. So for me, I've always been the caregiver type of person. I've always been the one to kind of I want to say like give more of myself than others do of themselves. And that was an eye-opening experience, I think, for me, because it was me kind of living this kind of codependency, neediness, whereas this other person needs me or I need them for this. It was a very unhealthy pattern that I was repeating over and over and over again. Just the codependency, and being single and doing this work and being single. I was single for six years, and going through this work and learning about kind of the things that make me tick and things that trigger these feelings that I need to have this person that does this for me. It was an eye-opening experience. It was an eye-opening experience to kind of go back and find out where these patterns originated from, or kind of wounds from childhood where they just grew and the triggers that really engaged those wounds and repeated those same feelings and patterns, and being able to see that now. And it's funny because the challenge is like in hindsight, everything makes sense, but the challenge is, I think I said this yesterday, to see it right now. But to see it now in a different kind of perspective with how I would behave in relationships in the past, to really being aware and really being authentic to myself and really being accountable with my own actions. And I laugh because like most of us operate on this level where you play this victim and it's not your fault. And at the end of the day, who's always at the scene of the crime? It's always me. So that's the common denominator in a lot of things. So being able to clearly kind of identify my own, I don't want to say wrongdoings, but my own patterns or, limiting beliefs or my patterns of behavior, which allowed me to be irresponsible in my relationships. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's really opened my eyes. It's really changed my perspective of, who I want in a partner and what it is that I want in my life that's really going to benefit me and grow with me, rather than me get into a kind of codependency relationship where I'm depending on somebody else for my own happiness and vice versa. So there's a lot. There's probably a lot more that I'm not even touching on, but
no, I think that's good. Yeah, that gives a really good overview of what it means to have that awareness and insight. And
yeah.
For yourself. And now, you know, how you're experiencing relations at present.
Yeah.
And that's very different, right?
For sure. Like I know now that, you know, boundaries, that's another big thing that I learned was creating firm boundaries and holding them is so important to me, because if I don't have that, it ends up being that like repeating that kind of codependent pattern. And it's okay. It's totally okay to have firm boundaries. It's totally okay to say, no, this is not what I want, and I won't tolerate it. And that's healthy. That's saying yes. But saying no to something you don't want is saying yes to yourself. And I didn't do that for a long time. And it's kind of, you're taking your power back. And it's I always say, like, these are my victories, right? Like having those moments where you want to celebrate. And I've had a lot of those over these past few years. I've had a lot of these like, you know, limiting beliefs that I've changed to empowerment, right?
Yes, and that is exactly the core of this work, is to empower women to be more authentic and to really feel themselves and then experience the things they want to be experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So great. So great to see you call back your power and how that has changed in your life. Like, you know, all of the ways that has expanded in your life and how that's shown up throughout, you know, all areas.
Mm-hmm.
What does being empowered and taking back your power back, what does that bring to your whole life?
It just it brings a sense of like peace, I want to say, like bringing a sense of like knowing who I am and not having that like those like insecure kind of like unworthy feelings. Like this is me, you know, this is who I am deep down, authentically. You know, I am responsible, you know, I am accountable, and I have the ability to change my situation and not kind of stay in this kind of, you know, it's not my fault victim mentality. And that in itself, being able to be accountable for your life is, you know, you can change it, right? You can change it in an instant. And that's something that I struggled with. I struggled with that, being like, I have no control over my situation. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. So it's those aha kind of moments where you're like, huh, like here I am. And, you know, I've come a long way from where I started.
My final thing that I want to ask you that I think is going to be really important for those who are watching is, you know, what would you say to other women like you who are completely in resistance to doing this work or to changing their lives? What would you say if there's hesitation of wanting to, you know, they want to work with someone, they want to work with a licensed soul therapist, and they feel that pull, they know that it's in their heart, but there's that resistance that shows up, there's that fear. What do you say?
I think it's being able to let go of that is probably one of the most rewarding things that you can do for yourself. You know, in my life, I've been on both sides of the spectrum, right? I've been holding on with dear life to something because I'm so afraid of change. And I've also been at the point where those those strings of change have pulled at me so much that you have no other options than just to release yourself and fall into it, and not really necessarily knowing what the outcome is going to be, because there's a lot of uncertainties in life, but trusting that if you're following your heart and you're following your gut or whatever you want to call it, trusting that if you're taking that leap of faith, that the universe or whoever you want to call it will provide that net to catch you should you fall. And yeah, I hesitated for a long time. I hesitated, really knowing that this is probably what I should do. And I think I wasted a lot of time doing that. So, if I would have started sooner, I could be at a different point in my life right now, right? So, but you're constantly growing. You do kind of go at your pace with what you're comfortable with. You know that from me. But yeah, I saw so much of a benefit from this that, it's like second nature to me now, right? So I hope other women, take that leap and just dive in, because it's definitely worth it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I look forward to seeing you very soon.
Me too. And you're so welcome. It's definitely my pleasure. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Emily. Lots of love and sending you so many hugs.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.